after a 4-4 start, in which it looked, rather questionable if they would be a playoff team. But, once they did make the playoffs, they were seen as, potentially being a dangerous 6 seed. And, as they showed the Bengals, who were without their starting quarterback, Andy Dalton, unfortunately, as Dalton had very good season before he went down, was definitely being seen as a top 5 MVP candidate, was having his best statistical season in his 5th season. Now, he had to watch from the sideline as A.J. McCarron just could not do enough in order to get the Bengals to win. Marvin Lewis, the Bengals head coach, now falls to 0-7 in the playoffs, and he's coached 13 seasons with the same team. He's the second longest tenured coach in the NFL, only behind Bill Belichick, and I don't know what it is. I mean, his regular season record, I believe he's won somewhere near 54% of his games, but I don't, the way coaches get fired left and right, and, not just the NFL, but really all sports, for Marvin Lewis to still have his job after 13 years with the same franchise and not a single playoff win. To be honest, as I mentioned, the way coaches get fired, it just seems absurd to me. And, from what I read, maybe an hour ago, that sources are saying that Marvin Lewis's job is safe. It doesn't matter that he hasn't won a playoff game yet. The way that game ended, I believe that was a sign that, maybe he doesn't have his players in check. You heard all that about Tom Coughlin a couple weeks back against the Carolina Panthers when Odell Beckham did what he did, in his matchup with Josh Norman. I believe he had 3 personal foul penalties. The Bengals just looked like a completely undisciplined team, and, that looked like maybe that should be the final straw. Marvin Lewis maybe should get canned, but, according to reports, he's going to stay, and, it'll be his 14th chance at, making the playoffs and actually winning a playoff game. Andy Dalton's had a terrible run in the playoffs. First 4 years as a starter, first 4 years as an NFL player, Bengals made the playoffs, and he went 0-4, I believe had 1 touchdown to 6 interceptions. He would have loved to redeem himself. Unfortunately, fractured thumb on his throwing hand did not allow him to play. Anyway, back to the Steelers. They forced 4 turnovers in that game. They forced 4 turnovers in the regular season finale, so they forced 8 in the last 2 games. 16 in the last 6. They actually played the Broncos not too long ago in Week 15 and defeated them 34-27. In that game, Antonio Brown, 16 catches for 189 yards and 2 touchdowns. Emmanuel Sanders for the Broncos had 10 catches for 181 yards and a touchdown. Martavis Bryant for the Steelers also had 10 catches. Ben Roethlisberger finished 40 for 55 for 380 yards, 3 passing touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. Now, there's some big injuries for the Steelers, as running back D'Angelo Williams, his foot injury caused him not to play in the playoff game against the Bengals. He'll be questionable for the Broncos game. Ben Roethlisberger suffered a shoulder injury during that Bengals game, missed a couple series, but came out for that last series. According to reports, he will be severely limited, but is likely to play. Still a week away from the game, so there'll be plenty of further updates, I'm sure, as well as Antonio Brown, as that hit by, Vontaze Burfict actually gave Antonio Brown a concussion. He'll have to pass all the concussion protocol in order to play this game against the Broncos. So a lot of question marks heading up to, their second round game against a Denver Broncos team who will now go back to Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning, who finally played in a game after not playing since November 15th, came in for Brock Osweiler, who had been the starting quarterback, sprained his MCL. In comes Peyton Manning. Does okay. Went 5 for 9 for 69 yards. Broncos won that game, secured home field throughout the AFC playoffs. But, easily the roughest season in Peyton Manning's career. Started 9 games this year. Completed a little less than 60% of his passes, 59.8, but 9 touchdowns to 17 interceptions. Majorly bad season for Peyton Manning's standards. We'll see if Gary Kubiak made the right decision in making Peyton Manning the starting quarterback. Of course, we know his career pedigree, but we also know he's, right around 40 years old and looked, in all intents and purposes, awful this season. They won their last 2 games to secure home field. That's after their previous 7 games in which they actually went under 500 at 3-4, as his team had started the season 7-0. That 34 points I mentioned that they gave up to Pittsburgh in the 34-27 loss in Week 15, that was the most points they allowed all season. Their 18.5 points per game allowed was 4th in the NFL. They have a couple key players who are currently listed as questionable, as cornerback Chris Harris, who missed their last regular season game with a shoulder injury, and DeMarcus Ware is nursing a knee problem. Those 2 guys are listed as questionable. 2 of, perhaps the most important pieces on that Broncos defense, which allowed the least yards in the regular season, the least passing yards, and the 3rd least rushing yards on the season. So those are your 2 second-round AFC games. Both should be fairly entertaining. As I mentioned, Steelers-Broncos, a rematch from a couple weeks ago. Peyton Manning making his first start in, it'll be over 2 months once that game takes place. Then we got KC facing a Patriots team who was trying to defend their Super Bowl championship. Brady, Belichick, 4 Super Bowls during their tenure together. And, Chiefs, 11 consecutive wins. I believe that win against the Texans was their first playoff victory since 1994. I want to say. I could be wrong on that. I believe that's the statistics that I saw. So both games, as I mentioned, should be entertaining. We'll see what goes on in the NFC. That game just kicked off about 2 minutes ago. Packers starting off with the ball. What a weather difference in the 2 games, as I mentioned. The Minnesota game was in negative temperatures, and this game in Landover, Maryland, is in the 60s. Here we are in early January, and still 60-degree weather in the Northeast. Absolutely amazing. So let's see if we get an entertaining game today. And, let's hope for some more entertaining games the rest of the playoffs. Of course, we still have NBA season, NHL season going on, a lot going on in sports. As I've mentioned in recent episodes, please check out my website, allsportsfansunite.com. I try to write at least a couple articles on there each day. Check them out. Become a follower of the show. Always know when I am on the air to be listened to. As you know, most of my shows are at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Today it's at 4 because, I'm actually taking part in the Stratomatic baseball playoffs starting today. Definitely excited for that. Nick the Beard, you're going down. Sorry to tell you. And, we'll see what happens after that. Hopefully I make the World Series, but, there's a lot of good teams in my league, and we'll have to see what happens. So, here we are, January 10th. Episode 63 is over. Thank you all for listening. I love you all so dearly. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Enjoy the rest of your work week. And know when I'm on the air next Sunday, most of you will be off the following day, as it's Martin Luther King Day. So, once my show's over, you don't have to worry about, oh man, it's almost time for work again. No, you'll have an extra day off. And if you do have to work that Monday, I'm sorry. But until next week, goodbye.